Get ready for the action because we are diving straight into the drama. Dana White made a calculated move this weekend, pulling the plug on the main event narrative by announcing the Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway fight for International Fight Week, UFC 329. This decision sent shockwaves through the entire combat sports world, and we break down exactly why this timing choice has everyone talking. We look at the fallout and what this means for the future of the UFC. Paul's most valuable promotions. We examine the long-standing rivalry between Paul and White and how this latest move has escalated their feud over fighter pay and control of the media spotlight. Finally, we look at the bigger picture surrounding the McGregor return and the ongoing tension between the two powerhouses. We explore what Conor McGregor has revealed about his only condition for returning to the octagon, and we recap the intense animosity fueled by Jake Paul's relentless trolling. Don't miss the full breakdown of this massive clash. Stay tuned right here for all the updates. Dana White's strategic announcement regarding a Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway fight has reignited tensions with Jake Paul, who publicly criticized White's timing as a display of insecurity. The controversy erupted following the debut of MVP MMA on Netflix, which featured a main event headlined by Ronda Rousey's submission of Gina Carano and Francis Ngannou's return to action against Philippe Lins. The event generated significant viewership, marking a major moment for Jake Paul's most valuable promotions banner. The friction point occurred when Francis Ngannou began his walkout to the cage. Instead of focusing on the fight, Dana White reportedly used the moment to go live on Instagram and officially announced the McGregor versus Holloway bout for UFC 329 International Fight Week. This move was perceived by observers, particularly Jake Paul, as a calculated tactic designed to overshadow the MVP MMA event. Paul, who has long expressed disdain for the UFC and champions MVP as a superior alternative, reacted strongly to the announcement. In a post-fight press conference, Paul directly confronted White, labeling the move as a sign of fear rather than strength. He dismissed the announcement, stating, "The cokehead is back. Nice, cool, doesn't matter. Just shows how pressed they are. Little insecure boys trying to piggyback off our event and trying to put some news over top of us. It's not gonna work, buddy." This incident highlights a long-standing rivalry between Paul and White, fueled by Paul's consistent criticism of fighter pay and his promotion of MVP. White is noted for allegedly using the news cycle as a strategic tool, targeting emerging rivals. The context is heightened by White's history of timing announcements to disrupt competitors, including actions taken after the Professional Fighters League signed Ngannou. Ronda Rousey offered a nuanced perspective, suggesting the move served to elevate MVP MMA by positioning it as a legitimate rival. Despite the on-screen drama, Francis Ngannou delivered a first-round knockout for Netflix. Ultimately, the exchange underscores the intense scrutiny the UFC boss places on his competition, as evidenced by White's deliberate attempt to control the narrative around his rivals. The world of combat sports was rocked by explosive claims and high-stakes announcements following a recent UFC event. Internet mogul Jake Paul launched a scathing attack on Conor McGregor, labeling him a cokehead, and directed harsh criticism toward UFC boss Dana White, accusing him of hijacking the momentum surrounding Francis Ngannou's walkout. The controversy intensified after Dana White announced Conor McGregor's return fight scheduled for July 17 during a live-streamed event. This news surfaced amidst heightened tension, especially following Francis Ngannou's departure from the UFC amid a contract dispute. When questioned by Outkick about the timing of the McGregor announcement, Jake Paul expressed deep skepticism regarding Dana White's motives, calling him insecure and suggesting the timing was calculated to capitalize on the promotion's momentum. Paul argued that the announcement merely reflected the UFC's anxiety over the current promotional landscape, suggesting that trying to overshadow his event would ultimately fail. Meanwhile, the underlying animosity between Paul and White, fueled by Paul's public critiques of the UFC's fighter pay structure and White's dismissal of Paul's credibility, set the stage for this disruption. This dynamic is further complicated by the ongoing friction between White and Ngannou. In a related development, Dana White has publicly stated that UFC fighters deliberately hide their pay from fans to avoid handouts. This statement adds another layer to the ongoing public debate surrounding fighter compensation and the business practices within the organization. UFC news dominated the fighting world on Saturday night, with Dana White announcing that Conor McGregor would return to the octagon on July 11 to face Max Holloway in the main event of UFC 329. The announcement immediately generated significant attention across sports media. This news coincided with the debut of Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions, an MMA event featuring high-profile talent including Francis Ngannou, Ronda Rousey, and Nate Diaz/Mike Perry. While the MVP MMA event successfully generated social media buzz, the announcement of the McGregor vs. Holloway bout amplified the attention surrounding the card. Following the event, Jake Paul addressed Dana White's announcement during a post-fight press conference. Paul expressed a pointed reaction, stating, "The cokehead is back. Nice. Yeah, that's cool. Drop it during our event. It doesn't matter. That just shows how pressed they are." He further criticized the situation, adding, "Little insecure boys trying to piggyback off of our event and try to put some news over top of us. It's not going to work, buddy." Paul's comments were seen as characteristic of his persona, particularly as his company enters the competitive MMA landscape dominated by the UFC and Dana White. The McGregor vs. Holloway matchup is highly anticipated, potentially positioning UFC 329 as one of the most viewed cards in recent UFC history, given McGregor's hiatus and Holloway's current popularity. While McGregor has indicated a desire to step back, speculation remains high regarding his return, with observers suggesting he will only re-engage when facing a new opponent. UFC mogul Jake Paul and UFC boss Dana White found themselves at the center of a media storm following recent events in the combat sports world. Jake Paul was vocal in his criticism of Conor McGregor, labeling him a cokehead, and accused Dana White of interfering with Francis Ngannou's walkout, a claim reported by Fox News. Paul further suggested that Dana White's announcement regarding McGregor's return fight was a calculated move to capitalize on the momentum surrounding Paul's promotional events. Paul dismissed the timing of the McGregor news, asserting that it only highlighted the UFC's insecurity and threatened by the promotion surrounding his own event. He told Channel YouTube, "Drop the McGregor news during our event. It doesn't matter. That just shows how pressed they are. Little insecure boys trying to piggyback off our event and put some news over top of us. It's not going to work, buddy." Meanwhile, the animosity between Paul and White has been fueled by Paul's public critiques of the UFC's fighter pay structure, which has long been a point of contention. This underlying tension was evident when Francis Ngannou departed the UFC following a contract dispute, leading to increased media attention on McGregor's return. In a separate development, Dana White has publicly commented on fighter compensation, suggesting that fighters deliberately hide their pay from fans to avoid giving handouts. This stance underscores the ongoing friction between the promotion's leadership and its athletes. The narrative highlights a significant clash between promotional figures and the UFC hierarchy, with both sides engaging in public sparring that has captivated the attention of the combat sports community.